Sanchez clubs the ball to left center. Tagging is Gardner. He'll score. I think they were trying to intentionally walk him.
This year, we're going to have a change in the intentional walk rule. It will no longer be necessary for 4 pitches to be thrown. Speeding up the game is important in terms of preserving the quality of our entertainment. The changes are designed to manage change that has taken place in the game over a period of time.
He felt like he should not honor the United States flag. He was the first to do it.
I didn't want to stand.
It's a symbol of oppression, of tyranny.
Sometimes I would turn sideways, disinterested, because I was disinterested.
America is the reason why he's making the big bucks.
I think it's an insult to all of the people that fought in the war.
Nothing has really changed.
Welcome to Outside the Lines. I'm Ryan Smith, filling in for Bob Lee. Well, it's time to play ball. Today is the first day that Major League teams face off against each other in spring training. And what better way to talk about everything baseball than with Commissioner Rob Manfred. So great to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right, so let's talk about the rule changes. That's all anybody's talking about right now. What changes are specifically planned for this year, and what changes are planned for next year?
Okay. This year, we're going to have a change in the intentional walk rule. It will no longer be necessary for 4 pitches to be thrown. We're also planning on having some changes in the replay system, time limit on managers challenging a particular play, and an outside limit on how long a replay can take, both designed to speed the game up. Next year, we're going to continue our discussions with the Players Association. We have 3 additional rule changes that are out there: the pitch clock, raising the strike zone, and a limitation on mound visits.
So with these changes have come some talk from the Players Association, but then also some talk from pitchers. Tyler Clippard said, what are we really trying to do here? We could just play home run derby if you really want to speed things up, because some of the changes you mentioned were designed to speed things up. I just want to ask, what do you say to those out there who say that some of the proposed changes, like shortening the strike zone and speeding up the pitch clock, are anti-pitcher?
Look, I think that the changes we've proposed are designed to manage organic change that has taken place in the game over a period of time. Right now, over the last 8 years, the average strike has become an inch, 1.7 inches lower than it used to be. That's a huge advantage for pitchers. I see that change as pushing things back towards the natural order.
So the idea is to make it as it should be, not to do things that are greatly to the disadvantage of pitchers.
It's absolutely the case. You know, I learned in law school, people who say, they take an argument to the absurd. That's a weak form of argument. We're not talking about home run derby. We're talking about relatively minor adjustments to the game in response to organic change that's gone on over a period of time that our fans are well aware of.
Do you think that speeding up the game will bring the fans back, will bring the fans that you want back, younger fans?
Look, I think speeding up the game in the sense of action, I'm not talking about absolute game time, I'm talking about action in the game, is important in terms of preserving the quality of our entertainment product. I think it's important in terms of attracting young fans. And most fundamentally, I think it is important in terms of responding to changes that has taken place to the game in an unmanaged way.
I want to ask you about some of the social issues that are going on today, and athletes speaking out about some of those issues, as well as how leagues handle things. The so-called bathroom bills have sent a lot of shockwaves around sports. The NBA pulling the All-Star game out of North Carolina, the NCAA pulling some of its championship games out of the state. What do you believe is the role of a commissioner with the National Sports League that's not only designed to be inclusionary but also benefits from inclusion when you have laws that are presented that some people believe are exclusionary?
Well, we think that a appearance, a commitment to inclusion is good for business. That's why we have been so out front on this issue with some of our initiatives. And I do think that it's important that a league depict to its fans a stance on issues that are relevant to those fans. In other words, we need to be welcoming to everybody in our ballparks.
What types of issues for you are relevant, and how do you depict that to fans?
Well, I think, for example, our initiative with Billy Beane, I think, is really important in terms of sending a message to our fans that regardless of orientation, we want you to be part of the baseball family. You're welcome to be part of that family, and that's a fundamental baseball value. I
know this is a hypothetical, but so if you have an all-star game in a certain position, or people talk about the Chief Wahoo logo in Cleveland, they have an all-star game coming up. I know you've had talks about that particular issue with their owner. Is something like that enough for you to think about moving an all-star game?
Well, I don't like to deal with hypotheticals. Let me take the one that's really our sport. I think it's important for the commissioner's office to engage with the owner in terms of addressing the offense that some people take with respect to that logo. We've begun those conversations, and I think you will see over the relatively short term that we'll be responsive to those concerns.
Also in your league, you have the issue sometimes with owners, and this happens a lot in America. People are speaking out about politics. Peter Angelos' son actually made a comment recently talking about how he believes the president needs to step away from some of the controversial positions he's taken. And he made this comment. He said, until that happens, it wouldn't be my preference to have the president throw out the first pitch. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Look, I think that we try to be apolitical. In the sense that, we have owners on all parts of the political spectrum, and for the league, for Major League Baseball to become too aligned on any political position is a mistake, number one. Number two, the president, the current president, the last president, was selected by the citizens of the United States. And that office, no matter who occupies it, is entitled to a certain degree of respect. And one of those signs of respect is an invitation to throw out the first pitch.
So for you, in a sense, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, you tell me, for them to speak out on something like that, their business, but you will stay out of that business.
That's exactly right, because I am a representative of the 30, and because there's such a diversity of positions among the 30 on political issues, it's really appropriate for the league to be apolitical. In contrast, an individual owner is like any other citizen. They get to say what they want to say.
Now, another issue you've been talking about recently is gambling. You made some very interesting comments, even to the effect of, and let me make sure I have this right, we are re-examining our stance on gambling. It's a conversation that's ongoing with the owners, in a sense, because there's this feeling that there's an opportunity that there might be some advantages here. Have you done any studies on what kind of advantage legalized sports gambling might present to baseball?
Yeah, we have done some research on how gambling relates to fan engagement. There's a lot of information available, for example, in Europe, where it's much more common in terms of legalized gambling. I think from our perspective, from baseball's perspective, it's clear that there's a conversation about gambling that's ongoing. Commissioner Silver's been very articulate about posing the issues, and I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we understand what the facts are. What kind of legalized gambling are you talking about? How would it be regulated? What are the threats to the integrity of the sport? And make sure that the institution's in a position to deal with whatever developments come down the road.
The involvement of African Americans in baseball seems to have decreased in recent years. I remember growing up being obsessed with baseball. I don't know if I see that kind of obsession among African Americans today. What's being done to engage African Americans in the sport of baseball, not only on the fan level, but in terms of getting more African American players in the league?
Well, it's probably our single biggest initiative. We have opened now 7 academies, MLB academies, that are generally in urban areas designed to reach into the African American community and develop players. We have a program called Reviving Baseball in the Inner Cities. That's more of a grassroots program as opposed to the academies that are elite play. And we're working very hard. We also have a program called the Elite Development Invitational. Florida, 2 weeks, all African American minority young players. We bring them, put them with former Major League players. They get the very best coaching. We had a separate program on just pitching that was held in Arizona.
In the inner cities as well?
Yeah, all kids from inner cities that we're bringing into a single location to work with Major League players, get the best development opportunities possible. Interestingly, these programs, which, you know, I have to give some credit to my predecessor, some of which began under Commissioner Seelig, have started to bear fruit. We have about 8% of our players in the major leagues are African American now. 20% of our first round draft choices in the last 5 years have been African Americans. Almost every single one of those players have some connection to a Major League Baseball program.
All right. Commissioner, so great to talk to you. We appreciate the time. We appreciate you stopping by as well.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Up next, the price of taking a stand. The story of how one NBA player says his faith led to the end of his career.
Once you make someone's life uncomfortable, expect your life to be made uncomfortable. There's going to be fallback. And eventually, my career is going to change.
Outside the Lines is brought to you by Milky Way. Deliciously distracting.
When San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick took a knee in protest of the national anthem last season, it set off a national conversation about race and patriotism in America. But before Kaepernick, there was Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. 21 years ago, he too sat down to stand up for what he believed in, for many going from star player to pariah. With the debate about athletes and activism now, Abdul-Rauf's presence seems more timely than ever. Mark Fainaruwada reports.
There's a time when you want to show power, and there's a time when you want to be finesse.
The basketball court always has provided refuge for Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, a place he felt confident and in command.
Push it, faster. Come on, push yourself. Get outside.
From his days at Gulfport High, where he was Mississippi's Mr. Basketball 2 years in a row, to his All-American career at LSU, to his 9 seasons in the NBA, the court was a place where, despite being barely 6 feet, Abdul-Rauf wowed fans through his wizardry with the ball. But these days, Abdul-Rauf can be found captivating some of academia's best and brightest, like when he spoke as part of a religious studies program at Yale last October.
If you go back to the 60s, when you saw that police dogs were being sick, police brutality, the images that we saw on television, and you look at the images now, there's really no difference.
In fact, today, Abdul-Rauf is in demand.
Assalamu alaikum.
From engaging with community members at an Islamic center in Detroit, to leading a youth basketball clinic, to meeting with 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick, Abdul-Rauf has appeared at more than a dozen events since August. When at the start of the NFL preseason, Kaepernick chose not to stand for the national anthem in protest of oppression against African Americans and police brutality, he sparked not only a national controversy, but essentially the resurrection of Abdul-Rauf.
He mentioned that this is the most free that he's ever felt in his life. And that's what it does. I understood what he was saying 100%, and I feel the same way.
Justice! Now!
Long before Trayvon Martin, before Black Lives Matter, before President Trump announced a travel ban on 7 predominantly Muslim countries, there was Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, a convert to Islam, who refused to acknowledge the anthem 21 years ago.
I've never stopped believing in what I believe in and feeling that way. If anything, it's even more confirmed now because nothing has really changed at all. In a lot of cases, it's getting worse.
During his recent visit to Detroit, just a week after the travel ban had been announced, Abdul-Rauf was asked his first reaction to the executive order.
I looked at it as an affront to Muslims worldwide, an attack on the religion itself.
Life as a child in Gulfport was tough for Abdul-Rauf, then known as Chris Jackson. Raised by a single mom, he struggled with Tourette's syndrome and grew up amid a hotbed of drugs, prostitution, and poverty. At LSU, his coach Dale Brown gave Jackson the autobiography of Malcolm X, a book that launched him on the path to becoming a Muslim.
His life fascinated me. Just the mind that he was, how he articulated his views, how moral he seemed to be.
With the third pick in the 1990 NBA draft, the Denver Nuggets select Chris Jackson from LSU.
The year after he was drafted, Jackson officially converted to Islam, and in 1993, he changed his name to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Reporter Dave Krieger covered the Nuggets for more than a dozen years. In 1996, he wrote about Abdul-Rauf's conversion.
There was an otherness about him. He was not your typical pro athlete at all. But when he talked about Islam, it was just very serious, very studious.
As he delved deeper into his new religion, Abdul-Rauf decided that participating in the national anthem was in conflict with his faith. And in March 1996, when a journalist ultimately reported on Abdul-Rauf's stance, it created a firestorm.
America is the reason why he's making the big bucks, and I mean, he should at least respect that.
It's also a symbol of oppression, of tyranny. So it depends on how you look at it. You can't stand for both. You can't be for God and be for oppression.
When it does become public, what is the reaction that you deal with suddenly?
There were hate mail that came through. There were death threats that came through.
Then NBA Commissioner David Stern suspended Abdul-Rauf, citing a rule that players must stand for the anthem. Stern, asked recently about the incident, told Outside the Lines, "We said to him, look, you don't have to come out. You could stay in the locker room. But if you come out with the team, given our rule, we can't have selective enforcement. You're going to have to stand." He said no, and so we suspended him. The showdown lasted one game. Abdul-Rauf says that after seeking guidance from other Muslims, he found a compromise solution: to stand and pray during the anthem. Though he led the team in scoring and assists, the Nuggets traded Abdul-Rauf to Sacramento after the season. He played 2 underwhelming years for the Kings, plagued by injuries and decreased playing time. And then he was out of the league.
Once you make someone's life uncomfortable, expect your life to be made uncomfortable. There's going to be fallback. And eventually, my career is going to change. Not that I had a death wish. Yeah, because you've seen the examples, the Muhammad Ali's, this is the way it works.
But to others, it was far more complicated. There were Abdul-Rauf's ongoing struggles with Tourette's and managing his medications, a devotion to Islam that had him fasting during Ramadan, weaknesses on defense, and questions about his commitment.
So as a GM, you're looking at that, I think, and you're saying, do I need all this other stuff if I can get somebody roughly as good who doesn't carry any of that baggage?
Hey, what are you doing? I'm just going to sit right here.
Today, Abdul-Rauf, a divorced father of 5, lives in Atlanta. He prays 5 times a day. He trains high school and college players and works with the occasional NBA player.
There you go!
Still demonstrating the speed and flair that carried him to a pro career. Abdul-Rauf says he's troubled by the new administration's demonization of Islam, America's foreign policy, and how the nation is perceived by people around the world. And yet, he says he has not lost hope.
I don't trust the system, but I do believe in people. Just simply after this ban, you had Christians and you had Jews and you had people coming together. I think the human being has more good in them than bad in them.
For more on Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, who gained notoriety for protesting the national anthem 2 decades ago, check out Mark Vanna-Ruwada's profile on ESPN.com. And now let's take a look back at the week that was on Outside the Lines.
We're firing coaches in midseason. Are you me?
This isn't about coaching. This is about winning, and it's about money.
You can fire me at midseason, but you're going to have to pay me $3 million. Oh, you'll let me stay now, won't you?
If you could draw up your dream job, right, what would it be? This would be it.
It is interesting to look at kind of how this all materialized. The whole thing was put in motion when Magic Johnson reached out to console her after her breakup with Phil Jackson. They had dinner in January, and all of a sudden, he's now in charge.
The interplay between sports and politics consistently lands in the headlines. But over the years, one man is often forgotten, Craig Hodges.
When no teams called me, no agents would represent me, and no one would call me back, so I understood that the die had been cast at that point.
If anybody's asking about my family,
then I'm going to let him know, yeah, it obviously affected my family, my wife's Imani.
To him, this isn't a political statement. This is a statement of fact. This is about his family. This isn't about politics.
You know, I think it's kind of ignorant of people to just come at me like that.
As much as the public has an outcry for guys to stay to sports, that time is gone.
These charges are a result of Dr. Nasser's assaults on young women.
I trusted him as a USA gymnastics doctor.
Dr. Nasser preyed on these young girls.
He would penetrate me repeatedly during these procedures for extended periods of time.
He is a monster.
But really what I think the story is here is not so much what happened to me individually as it is how this was allowed to happen.
Keep up to date with us on OTL by following us on Twitter, or if you prefer, Facebook or Instagram. We're also streaming live as well. Michael and Jamel want you to join them weeknights for the new 6 o'clock Sports Center on ESPN, bringing their own brand of style and personality, talking sports, music, movies, anything you want. Then, NBA on ESPN tonight at 8 Eastern. It's the Celtics and the Raptors. Then we head west for the Spurs and the Clippers at 10:30. Coverage tips off with NBA Countdown at 7. Okay, we all love the fact that certain days of the week have their own nicknames. So, for example, there's Hump Day to describe Wednesday, and then, of course, Throwback Thursday was all the rage on Facebook. Friday has been dubbed Flashback Friday, but wait a second. Flashback Friday, not good enough. Here at Outside the Lines, we've got a new tradition to start. We are pleased to present Faceplant Friday. Erskine College's Bailey Browning grounds it to the pitcher. Browning tries to dig in, get that hit, flips over the bag, basically does a backflip over the base. Ouch. She was okay, thankfully. Erskine would split that doubleheader with Carson Newman. Erskine's nickname, by the way, is the Flying Fleet. Maybe it should be the Flying Feet. To gymnastics, Arkansas Razorback gymnast Sydney McGlone, who was not, I repeat, not hurt during this. Check this out. Ouch. That was a practice run at the vault during a home meet in Fayetteville. But undeterred, not to mention under her own power, she pokes fun at herself and then proceeded to receive her team's highest score with that. Ow. And Tom Brady. Well, his year started on a low note, Deflategate, but it ended on a high note. 5th Super Bowl win as a starting quarterback, his 4th Super Bowl MVP. So why is he on Faceplant Friday? We would love to show you. You see Tom face planted while skiing. He posted it on social media, so why aren't you seeing it? His people took the air out of that idea, saying no to us, so this sack is going to have to do. So whether you're the GOAT or you're on the way to becoming one, you're never too great to faceplant. That's Outside the Lines for today. I'm Ryan Smith. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again Sunday, 9 a.m. right here on ESPN.